We're in it. Cheers.
Cheers.
How you doing?
I'm good.
Good.
Comfy.
Good. I'm
Very
glad.
comfy. My silk pajamas.
We're both in silk pajamas. Yours are a little nicer, though.
Oh, I don't know about that. Yours are also nice. Vertical stripes are very slimming.
So, dark history of Penn's Woods, unusual deaths, crimes, and hauntings in Southeastern Pennsylvania. Jennifer L. Green. What's the middle name?
Lee.
Lynn? Lee?
It's always either Lee or Lynn.
Is it L-E-E?
Yes.
Me too. I never meet anybody with L-E-E. So, all right. This is wild to me that it's always wild that when anybody publishes a book, I think that's such a huge deal and it's such a big accomplishment. So, congrats on that.
Thank you.
Just that in general is awesome. But what you're writing about, where did this even come from? How did you even start or decide?
Oh, it's quite a journey. So this is actually my second book. So I sort of flatter myself that I kind of knew what I was doing on this book. The first one was, it was generated directly out of a job that I had. So I worked at the Colonial Pennsylvania plantation in Delaware County in Ridley Creek State Park. And I've worked in museums for probably 15 years at this point, and we were trying to figure out what to do for Halloween. And the one thing I will not do as a historian, I will not make things up. So we were trying to find stories that were true, that were dark or scary, and, from that exact area. And I thought, if I find one, maybe I'll find two if I'm lucky. Yeah. But no, I found 13.
From Ridley Creek?
From that Ridley Creek, Newtown Square.
I live right behind there. I wonder if you know it's the big old white farmhouse that caught on fire. It's right on Providence Road.
Okay.
It has a lot of history. It's from the 1700s, so we're always like, what happened? Who died in here? What happened?
Well, I mean, if it's from the 1700s, the very least you can expect is someone did die in there.
Someone definitely died.
It's just a matter of if they stayed.
Right, we'll have to talk more on that.
So I very pointedly was like, I'm not here to tell ghost stories. I'll tell dark history. So I found these stories. We incorporated them into the lantern tours at Colonial Pennsylvania Plantation, which still runs every October. They still do lantern tours, and they're fabulous.
I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, I recommend it. But after I ended up leaving Colonial Plantation in 2020 and moving over to the Chester County History Center. And, of course, 2020 was a rough year for a lot of people, especially in the museum field. And I decided that was the year I was going to write a book. So I just started writing all of these stories down and doing research and was able to find a publisher based right out of Havertown called Casemate Publishing.
Yes.
And they were starting a new local history, regional history imprint called Brookline Books. So they said, yeah, we'll publish it. And I'm like, wow, that was a lot easier than I thought it would be. It was just the right time, the right place. I talked to the right people. So it just kind of came about, book one. And then when I started getting ideas for book two, they said, yeah, absolutely.
Let's go.
Let's do it. Yeah.
So we're sitting in Kennett Square right now, and I know you have one story about Kennett. Can you share it?
Absolutely. So this is a story. A lot of people in Chester County have probably heard this name, and the name is Sandy Flash. Now, Sandy Flash was a fictional character written into a novel called The Story of Kennett by local novelist Bayard Taylor. And it was based on a real historical figure named James Fitzpatrick. James Fitzpatrick was born before the Revolution. He apprenticed as a blacksmith. And when the Revolution started, he volunteered for the American Army. And he was up in New York. He ended up getting injured in a battle. And he was ordered, before he was fully healed, he was ordered to do some menial task. It's usually something like polishing his superior officer's boots or something like that. And he said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm injured. And for that, he was whipped for disobedience.
Wow.
And so he was a volunteer. And he very quickly said, I didn't sign up for being whipped. So he deserted the army. He came back here to Chester County, and a militia unit came to try and arrest him in front of his mom, which probably was, just the straw that broke the camel's back. And he decided to become a highwayman. So he assisted the British when they came down in this area for the Battle of Brandywine. He was a scout for them, and he specifically robbed and harassed American patriots in the area. So he would rob tax collectors on their routes, and he was born in the Doe Run area, but he spent a lot of time in Kennett Square. At one point, he was at the Unicorn Tavern, which was, I believe, up on State Street. It's not there anymore. I think it burned down. But he was sitting at the bar. He was just drinking his drink, and there was this whole, meeting of drunk men planning how to capture him. And he's just sitting there overhearing all of this.
Wow.
And then after the meeting was over, he went outside, he found the man that ran the meeting and robbed and beat him. So that was right here in Kennett Square.
Oh my God.
But the important thing is that I always like to reinforce is he never took a life. He beat people up, but he never...
For the right reasons. No.
Depending on which side of the war you were on. But he ended up being captured and being hanged. In what was then the Chester County, what's the word?
Wow. What is it?
The capital of Chester County. What's the word? The county seat. The county seat, which was at that point Chester. And so they hanged him as a housebreaker, not as a traitor. And it was during this weird time in between, when the British, we were under British law and then we were under American law, but we were still in the revolutionary process and we hadn't adopted new laws. And can you be a traitor if you're still following British law?
Right.
So it's all very interesting.
It's so interesting, and I love that because not a lot of people are talking about this stuff today.
Right.
And I feel like it just gets lost. So I just think it's a beautiful thing that you're putting it all down onto words, and we're gonna have this forever.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what was your darkest thing that you found out?
Oh gosh, I mean,
or the one that really chilled you to the bone.
There's one that I have in the second book. It's called Bonfire of the Ballet Girls, and it's one that I've actually turned into a presentation because I think it's so important to understand it. It's basically this confluence of, in the early 19th century, the ballet was a place that kind of promoted and engendered abuse, and they were pulling ballerinas from the lower classes, and they were putting them in these costumes that were highly flammable.
Never even knew this.
So tutus they're basically an open weave cotton. Cotton is very flammable, and then you weave it more loosely, and it's extremely flammable.
Oh no, I'm scared to hear the rest of the story.
Yes. So there were ways to render these tutus as safer, but it tended to make the tutus yellowish and dingy. And these poor girls depended so heavily on the support of wealthy, usually male patrons, who didn't want to see ballerinas in yellow, dingy skirts. They wanted to see them in brilliant white tutus dancing across the stage. So as an economic decision for these girls, they would not treat their tutus with this chemical that rendered them fireproof, right, or less flammable. And in 1861 in Philadelphia, at the Continental Theater, there was a play going on, and it was a remake of The Tempest, and it had 28 ballerinas in it. And at one point, after the first act, they all went up into their dressing rooms. One of the ballerinas reached up to grab a costume off the wall. The costume caught on one of the open gas jets that were on the wall for illumination, caught fire, and while these other ballerinas were trying to put her out, they all caught fire. So 28 ballerinas.
Oh my God, that's horrible.
Yeah. And so 9 of the 28 ended up dying. But for me, you see the confluence of poverty. There's a certain aspect of workplace safety that's coming into it. There's technology, like these amazing gas lights that everybody loved, but
Right.
you know, were highly dangerous. I mean, the Chestnut Street Theater was the first theater in Philadelphia to install them in 1816. And by 1820, I think it was, or 1821, the Chestnut Street Theater had already burned down once.
Oh my God.
So that was kind of a cost of doing business sort of thing. But the opportunity that I loved about this was the chance to learn about these girls, these particular girls who were from Philadelphia, who were from England, and really dig into who they were. Because so often with all of these stories, you hear about, you know, a horrible death or a crime.
And that's it.
And that's it.
And that's it. Yeah.
But as a historian...
What did you find out?
As a historian, because of the way that people, not just in this story, but in general, because of the way they died, newspapers tend to report more on them. So you'll like a 16-year-old lower class ballet girl from Berks County who may have otherwise disappeared into the historical record. I knew what her parents' names were. I knew what her life was like growing up. I knew what her personality was like, where her house was, you know. So it's not just writing about horrible deaths. It's also kind of the life of a person that we would otherwise never know about.